Here with me now in New York is CBSN political contributor and Democratic strategist Lis Smith, and in Washington, former Chief of Staff to Senator Mitch McConnell, Josh Holmes. Josh, I want to go to you first. Donald Trump's rhetoric from the very beginning has been rather extreme, so I wonder, does it come as a surprise that Clinton is now starting to make this alt-right argument? I mean, why not sooner?
Yeah, no, it really doesn't come as any surprise that she's starting to make that argument. Obviously, she's had a huge opening with the new hire of Steve Bannon, who's been sort of ahead of an alt-right movement at Breitbart for the last few years. So it comes as a good time for her. I think it does a couple of things. The first thing that it does, which I think is most important for her, is it provides some intensity for her base that she's sorely lacking. This is a candidacy that the left has basically embraced by necessity, not because they're particularly enthused about voting for Hillary Clinton. This kind of argument will definitely give it some energy, and she needs that down the stretch. The second thing it does is it makes center-right Republicans and the Republican Party in general extremely uncomfortable. For those of us who have worked incredibly hard to have a inclusive, big tent Republican Party where we're speaking to the concerns of Americans from all different walks of life, this kind of thing gives us absolutely a huge gastric bypass of concern, and obviously we'd like it to go away as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and you mentioned Trump's new CEO of the campaign, the former publisher of Breitbart. I guess he's still in that position. He said during one of the conventions that Breitbart is the, quote, platform of the alt-right. So it remains to be seen, I guess, if Trump's campaign now becomes the platform of that movement. It would seem Hillary Clinton would like to make it that. I want to go to Lis Smith now. Interesting dynamic developing between Clinton and Trump. Trump last night called her a bigot. Now Hillary is going to give this alt-right speech. I'm guessing the timing is not coincidental.
No, and, you know, I agree with a lot of what Josh has said. I don't think there are many coincidences in politics. And it coincides, right, with the rollout of Trump 2.0, the kinder, softer, gentler Donald Trump, who has taken, you know, who now has concern for the plight of Hispanic Americans, of undocumented Americans, and Black Americans.
And will fill the air with regret. He has regret.
Right.
There's a vague sense of regret emanating from him at the moment, but
right.
we don't know what he regrets exactly.
Yeah, and I also agree with Josh, too. You know, these are two candidates who are very different, but they face these same imperatives. They both have to be on script, and they both have to be on the offensive. They both have a ton of baggage, and to kind of to energize their base, they really need to go on the offensive against their opponents. And look, he's given us a lot of material to work with, not just during this campaign, but over the last few decades with, you know, the housing discrimination cases, his involvement in the Central Park 5 controversy, and case after case. So I think she's going to have a lot to say. My one thing would be this, is when she talks about the alt-right, who the heck knows what the alt-right is? So I hope she just calls it out by name and says, these are racist elements of our society. These are white nationalist elements of our society, and these are people that he should not be associating with.
Yeah, the alt-right, it does sound like something out of Portland in the 90s.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a weird moniker. Josh, I want to go to you. I mean, Donald Trump, we've talked a lot about him pivoting. Is he going to pivot? Maybe he hasn't pivoted, and then he falls back. This time, he's clearly making a pitch to more moderate Republican voters. Hillary Clinton is trying to block that pitch with this alt-right speech. Do you think she's going to be able to stop him as he makes this new move?
Well, I don't know that she is going to be doing as much stopping as he does himself. I mean, part of the problem with Donald Trump's candidacy, and we saw this back in 2012 with Mitt Romney, Mitt Romney made one comment about self-deportation in a debate back in March before the election in November, and they hung it around his neck for 6 months until Election Day. Donald Trump spent the better part of a year campaigning on deporting, on building a wall, on sort of divisive Hispanic rhetoric, if not worse. And now he's going to try to pivot towards the center on that. Look, there's much more tail of the tape on the other side of it than there is in the moderate middle. I just don't know how well that's going to sell at this point. If I were him, the biggest thing that he needs to sell is that he can do the job. I think if you're looking at moderate Republicans, the reason they're not on board with Donald Trump at this point is because they're not sure he could actually do the job in the Oval Office. That's what I'd focus on.
Yeah.
And, you know, just to Josh's point, I was on the Obama campaign in 2012, and my job as Director of Rapid Response was to hang comments like self-deportation around Mitt Romney's neck. And this is the thing, is we had to explain to people what self-deportation was. I mean, it's a very kind of benign term for a very ugly policy. Yeah. We don't have to explain to people what Donald Trump's terms mean when he calls Mexican immigrants rapists and murderers and drug dealers. We don't have to explain what he means when he says he wants to have deportation forces. So it's a much, much easier case for us to make.
Yeah, and just last night he called Hillary Clinton a bigot, although he has been trying to reach minority voters. Initially a bit problematic because he was addressing rooms full of non-minority voters as he made this pitch, but this morning he did sit down in a roundtable with African-American leaders. Let's take a listen to a little bit of that and then talk about it.
We have great relationships, and the numbers are going up with the African-American community rapidly. We've had, and I've always had great relationships with the African-American community, and now, I've made it such a focal point. But a very important part of the message for me is the African-American community, because they have really been let down by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats.
So that was Donald Trump this morning at a roundtable of the Republican Leadership Initiative, trying to make his pitch to minority voters. Romney, you got a very few of them in 2012, and we've got Trump polling at about 8%. In some polls, there's a single African-American who'll say he's voting for Donald Trump. Josh, I want to go to you, and then I want to get Liz's reaction as well. Does Donald Trump really have a chance of winning over minority voters, or is that sort of like him winning New York State?
Yeah, I really don't think. I mean, first of all, I do feel compelled to say I applaud any candidate, Republican or Democrat, that makes appealing to black voters, Hispanic voters, and all voters a centerpiece of their campaign at any point. So I think Donald Trump's doing the right thing on that. As to whether he's going to be successful, I think we give some reason for real skepticism on that. I've actually never seen a candidate poll 0 in a nationwide poll with a major demographic. He did it twice. So, I think that there's a huge uphill climb for him. But I do think that there's a really positive conservative argument for how minority communities can be helped by conservative policies. I hope they continue to make, there's a lot of candidates out there across the states in Senate races and House races that make that really effectively. I'm not sure Donald Trump is the best messenger for that, and I don't know that this is going to work.
Liz, I think we can agree Donald Trump is not the best messenger, but can he be an effective enough messenger to give him the votes he needs for November?
No, I don't think so. And I think another problem for him is that this rollout of Trump 2.0 undermines the core rationale for his entire candidacy and undermines why he won the Republican nomination in the first place. He said from the beginning, I am not a politician. I am not poll-driven. I will never read off a teleprompter. And you know what? In those first 100 days of my presidency, I will build a big, beautiful wall, and I will deport every undocumented immigrant. And you know what he's doing right now? He's turning his back on all those promises. And this is a consultant-driven Hail Mary. And this is a problem for Donald Trump. I do not think he's Aaron Rodgers here, and I do not think he'll be able to connect on this one.
Yeah, it's funny. The internet remembers everything. There's a record of just about everything, but voters apparently do not have the memory of the internet just yet.
Yep.
Lis Smith and Josh Holmes, thank you both very much.
You.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.